As Kimberly said, we are going to talk a little bit about math today. It's not that scary or boring, I hope. So let's see. I wanted to introduce myself a little bit. Most of you in the room know who I am. Not all of you do, so I'll give you a quick background for those of you who don't know me. I'm a chartered accountant, and I have been for 22 years. Until the last couple of years, my career was really spent managing finances and working on software projects for companies in private business. For example, vice president at Famous Players Theaters, I did that for a few years, and after that I was the vice president and CFO at a privately held publishing firm. And as I said, generally working on managing finances and working on software projects. About 11 years ago, I married Gillian Gillis, the very talented designer in the back of the room. And that sort of started a whole process that led to me being here today. It was a long track, 11 years. As Gillian grew her design business that she started after coming to Canada, the record-keeping needs grew and grew, and I think all of you know how that goes when you start your business. So, of course, as her husband and unpaid accountant, this became my problem, right? I'm sure a lot of you have been in that same situation. So what did we do about it? Well, I didn't really like any of the general software packages that are out there because I didn't feel they addressed the unique needs of design firms properly or well enough, thoroughly enough, accurately enough. So we did what I'm sure a lot of you have done, developed a whole bunch of spreadsheets, templates, and managed all of your business that way. And that worked okay for a while, and that evolved over many years until we got to the point where we said, this is ridiculous. This is an industry that is really, really screaming for a unique solution. This is an industry whose record-keeping needs are really kind of different and special. And so we, through some miracle, persuaded JD and Ian, who are software experts, that this was a good idea as well, and decided to create Design Docs, which is, as some of you know, just basically it's an online project management and accounting system designed specifically for use in small, medium-sized design firms. It does everything that you need to run those businesses. So that's me. I assume everybody pretty much in this room is running their own business or works for somebody who does, is that right? Pretty much. That's what I thought. Okay, so before we get into anything too technical, let's talk about this. Oops. Why did you get into the business? And I was assuming this might have been one of the reasons. It's because you love math, right? You like math? You like working with numbers? I know some of you do. It's true. You like percentages even more, right? Percentages are fun, right? Marking up, marking down, what's going on. No, it's a joke, but realistically, the thing is you get into the design business because you want to design, and then you find out, wow, there's a lot of numbers involved. There's a lot of administration, a lot of paperwork, and you're all spending way too much time doing it, and nobody likes it, so we're always looking for solutions and ways to avoid it. So today I'm going to just talk about two pretty simple things to do with math. The two simple things are developing a plan and then using math to help you improve the bottom line. So I just want to go through some of those basic things. Let's look at the plan. First of all, I can hear it coming already. I have to set goals again, right? I have to set a financial plan, and I know Kimberly's already breathing down your necks about setting plans and goals for everything. But I'm telling you, doing a financial plan is nothing to be scared of. You guys have all gone into business by yourselves and put yourselves out there. That's the scary part. Setting a financial plan will be a slam dunk for you guys. It's not hard, so you don't need to be afraid of it. You've done the scary part already. And it's important to look at financial planning so that when you get to the year end and you have that big chat with the bookkeeper about where you stand, you want to know where you're going to be. You want to know, why am I working so hard all year? So that's why I'm trying to persuade you to do a plan, and I'm going to suggest a really simple way of doing a financial plan. It starts with something like this. This is a really high-level, very simplified statement of net income, okay? Much more brief than Kimberly's was. But the bottom line is it's essentially measuring the same thing. There's sales, there's direct cost of sales, and there are overheads and net income at the bottom. I'm calling sales what Kimberly calls income, total income, the top line, the money in, and net income is the bottom, what's left after all the expenses. So it starts with that, and I show you this because I want to urge you in your financial planning, don't get too complicated, think big picture. This is another way of looking at the exact same statement, only I've broken it into two segments because I find that, well, in the design industry, in my experience, generally you're operating in two segments, most of you. You have fees and you have goods. And when you're developing a financial plan, the four numbers that you see there in green are really all you have to think about. Just look at that big picture. What are my fees going to be this year? What am I going to sell in goods? And what's the rate of profit on those goods? That's the 20% you see in green. And then what, in a big picture sense, are my overheads? You don't have to drill down and forecast them thing by thing by thing. So that's what we're going to look into developing for the financial plan. First, start with fees. It's the easiest one. In this model, I think in the financial plan, I had $100,000. Starting with planning a fee structure is quite easy. Really, you make some decisions, and the rows in green are the decisions. How many hours do I want to work in a week? How many weeks a year do I want to work? And let the math take care of it. I've also allowed for the percentage billable, and I know there's a lot of discussion and we could spend, the whole time just on that, but I've assumed 70% billable. So this is somebody who works 30 hours a week, bills 21, so they've got 9 left over for administration or whatever they do, and they want to target about 100,000. With those, the math works out to $110 has to be their rate. If they like that rate, if they like that target, great. If you don't, just play with those numbers in green, change them around until you get the right balance that's right for you. So if you think you can bill 150 an hour, you can have a higher target or you can work less hours. Pretty straightforward, right? That's all you really need to do. Just fiddle around with these numbers and think about where do I want to be in terms of my fees for the year. After that, it gets a little bit trickier. Planning a margin on goods. And I know, well, there was a lot of discussion yesterday about having no margin on goods, right? Kelly and Lori. If there's people, and there are some who run their business that way where all the discount goes to the client, you don't really have the margin on goods, but I definitely urge you to pay attention and follow through because I'm going to tie back to that later, and I think it might affect how you think about the goods side of your business. I'm going to be showing a way of planning for a margin on goods because this is the way most of you guys are working. So, margin on goods. It starts with knowing what is it. Remember, what you're trying to do in planning is come up with an overall average number for the year. Not necessarily easy, but you want to come up with an overall average, and you know that the overall average really comes from all the little bits and pieces that you sell in every project all year. So don't sweat it, just think about where your business comes from, and you'll see that I'll show you how to come up with a good average. This is just a simple illustration that says, if you're buying something at 20% off and giving the client 10, then your sale is $900 on a retail item of $1,000. Your profit is $100. Your profit's 11%. Similarly, if we look at something with deeper discount, 50, 25 goes to the client. Your sale is $750, 25 off, and your profit's $250. Your margin is actually 33.33%. And I show this because sometimes there's confusion around percentages in that people think when they get 50 off and give 25 to the client, they're left with 25. And my profit was 25, wasn't it? It's 33 because it's $250, which, yes, that's 25% of 1,000. But that's not relevant to you. What's relevant to you is your sale, $750. So in terms of your financial statements, $750 is the sale, $250 is the profit, 33. So you see the picture. You end up selling a lot of things across the year. Some of them are at really low margin. Some of them are at high margin, like this. What's it going to average out to be? That's what you're after when you're doing a plan. So in a company like this, we have a sales mix adding up to $150, where they've got some sales at 10%, some at 20, some at 30, a mix of margin, right? And this averages out to be 21% for this company. Similar company, same exact sales number, but instead they have a large portion of their sales at low margin. So they come in at 15%. Just a lot different. So that's just to illustrate how the sales mix can affect things. It is a lot of numbers, but the reason it matters is this. If you're the company that's selling, that's averaging 20% in the year, and your sales are 300, you've got 60 in profit. That's gross profit, just on the goods segment I'm talking about. If you are not, if you're down at 15%, you can actually increase your sales all the way to 360 and still make less money. So that's how the math works out, a very small change. So if you're staying at 15% and you want to break even, you want to still make 60, look at that. You've got to increase your sales from 300 to 400,000, a third. So what's easier, moving your sales needle by 33%? Or working on your supply side, costing, pricing, and working out how to move your margin a few percentage points. It's actually not that hard, and we'll talk about it later in improving the bottom line, to move your margin. So that's why the rate of profit matters so much. So this is about figuring out what the average should be. This is the sidebar that I referred to before, dealing with not fixed fees, but if you are in the business of passing all your discount along to a client, I've heard people say this to me, look, I don't care about margin, I'm not doing all this buying and selling, all my discounts go to the client and I charge an admin fee. So I wanted to show the math on what that means. So in the same company, 150,000 in sales at the 21% margin, gave a 31 profit. Well, that implies obviously a cost of 119,000. If that's what your cost is and you're charging a 10% admin fee, that's $11,009, which is $19,000 or 62% worse than just doing the buying and selling at 21%. Now, you might have good reason to run your business that way, you have different fee structure, you have different ways of doing things, and it's fine. I'm not criticizing that, I'm just showing you how the numbers work out, and the break-even rate that you would have to charge if you want to be in the same boat would be 26%. So if you are passing all your discount along and using a markup, you might want to change it. If it's 10, maybe it needs to be 15 or something. We come back to, remember, the segmented statement of income. We've talked about the fees. That's pretty straightforward. We've talked about figuring the margin out. How are you going to figure the margin out? You really need to think about and have a look at maybe previous year's financial statements, think about the suppliers you use. I showed you how, some things are high margin and some products are lower margin. Think about all those supply relationships and what your pricing is and come up with an average. If it's the first time you're doing it, don't spend all kinds of time, don't spend the whole weekend on it. Just get a good feel for it, put something down and go with it. By the end of your first year, you're going to get a lot better at it and your plan going into the second year will be a lot better. But you can get a really good feel. In this company, I've assumed 20% because I know a lot of things sell at a third, a lot of things sell at 10%. And then the last element of that is just figure out what your overheads would be. And I mean, these are just supplies for the office, advertising, phones, and this kind of thing. Previous year's financial statements, plus a little bit of a look at what am I going to do this year? Is anything different this year? That's going to help you come up with just a ballpark on that number. So don't sweat it too much. Just look at the big numbers like that. Do the math, but not too much. Keep it simple. Use your experience as a guide. Be realistic, but be a little bit optimistic as well. So, you want to push yourself a little bit and set some goals. And you'll find after you set these goals, it's actually fun to see where you're coming in against those goals. 6 months down the road, you can sort of check in and go, okay, what's going on year to date against these goals, and you will find that they work. And I hear too many stories from people about the big mystery at the end of the year. These are non-Design Docs users, by the way, people who aren't in control of their finance. They take all their stuff to the bookkeeper and they just wait and go, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what my income was for the year, right? Is that you? Yeah, so don't do that. And then when they tell you it was $35,000, you're like, what? I thought it was. So by doing a plan, at least you have some idea where it should be coming in on, and you know that you're watching it month to month.